Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The sun had barely risen over the blood-stained fields of Gettysburg when Thomas Beckett's eyelids fluttered open to a world drenched in pain. His body was broken, ribs fractured by the mid-July clash of muskets and artillery. The air was thick with the metallic scent of gunpowder and the coppery tang of blood. Around him lay the silent forms of men whose lives had been cruelly stolen in the fury of battle. Thomas's usual stirring heart, once steady and proud as a Union soldier, now beat weakly, struggling against the oncoming darkness. He had been left here, forgotten in the aftermath, a casualty assumed to be dead. The cries of the wounded mingled faintly in the distance, growing ever fainter with each passing hour. The frantic chaos of battle had given way to the grim stillness of twilight. The crows had begun to gather, their black wings cutting sinister silhouettes against the pink sky, ominous tributes to the fallen. Pain flared anew as he shifted, the ragged tear in his blue uniform damp against bloody flesh. His fingers grazed the earth, cold and unforgiving beneath the open sky. A faint breeze whispered, stirring the wild grasses of the field. Somewhere, beyond the shattered remnants of muskets and cannonballs, a soft melody rose. A woman's voice, clear and haunting. Struggling, Thomas turned his head in the direction of the sound. Through the hazy veil of heat and smoke, a figure emerged. She moved with purpose, her dark hair cascading like a waterfall over a faded shawl. Her eyes, sharp and yet kind, met his with such intensity that for a moment Thomas felt untouched by pain, as if the very act of being seen might stitch his shattered body whole again. She knelt beside him without hesitation. "You're still alive," she said quietly, the strength in her voice a balm to the soldier's wounded soul. I thought they'd left me to die," Thomas croaked, words tight with agony. "Some wounds take longer to fade than others," she replied, a shadow crossing her face. "But not tonight." In her hands was a worn cloth, soaked with a bitter-smelling tonic she applied gently to his wounds. The sting was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the agony that had consumed him. All the while, her fingers moved with practiced delicacy, as if healing was less about medicine and more about magic. "I am called Alara," she said, eyes darting to the horizon as if sensing danger. "No one knows where I truly come from." Thomas attempted a smile, despite the burning terror he clung to. "Then I suppose I am fortunate to be found by a stranger who answers to a ghost's name." Alara chuckled softly, a sound like wind chimes on a summer night. "Maybe I am the ghost, or perhaps just the shadow of death itself, come to give one last grace." As night wrapped the battlefield in its embrace, Thomas's senses wavered, but Alara's warm presence anchored him. She had fashioned a makeshift bed of blankets and herbs beside a thorny bush, a faint fire casting flickering shadows on their faces. The crows, ominous sentinels of the dead, perched on distant branches, their unblinking eyes watching the fragile life struggling beneath them. Hours passed, and Thomas slipped into fevered dreams. In his restless sleep, he dreamed of Alara. Her face not just kind but hauntingly familiar. A woman wreathed in darkness, yet tethered to him by invisible strings. She appeared in visions beside a gentle creek, her hands weaving stories into the breeze, centuries old but alive with urgency. When morning light seeped across the battlefield, Thomas awoke with a start. The pain had abated somewhat, and his surroundings appeared clearer, the haze lifted. Alara was tending to a small fire nearby, arranging wildflowers in a careful pattern. She looked over when he stirred. "You've lost much blood," she said. "But you're stubborn. That's a fine quality. One that might just save your life." Thomas tried to sit up but was stopped by a gentle hand. "No, rest. The worst is over, but the healing has only begun." Over the next days, Alara tended to Thomas with relentless care. Water warmed over the fire, poultices made from herbs plucked at dawn, and bandages expertly tied. She never spoke of herself, only of the world beyond the war, the woods, the wildflowers, and birdsong. Thomas learned that this mysterious woman knew the land intimately. She found wild edible roots and fresh water sources in part of the forest that not even his fellow soldiers dared approach for fear of Confederate patrols and prowling wolves. She shielded him from the world with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to solitude and secrets. One evening, as twilight painted the sky with streaks of purple and gold, Thomas asked the question that had weighed heavily on his mind. "Who are you, Alara? How did you find me here?" Alara's eyes darkened, her gaze slipping away to the far horizon. "I am said to belong to no place and all places. A woman who walks between worlds, between times, or so the legends say." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I have seen this war before, and many others. I arrive when the cries are loudest, when the blood calls for someone to save what can be saved." Thomas frowned, struggling to piece together her cryptic words. "Are you a healer? A nurse?" She shook her head. "No, Thomas. Not quite. I am something else. A witness, some say a spirit bound to these lands. A guardian of those caught in the terrible storms of men's hatred." Skepticism warred with wonder in Thomas's mind. He wanted to believe, to hold on to the hope she embodied, but his world was one of hardship and blood, not ghost stories. Yet, there was no denying the miraculous thread of life she had woven back into him. Days turned into weeks. The war raged on, but Thomas's strength returned steadily. His wounds closed, the fever broke. Alara remained by his side, her presence calming the restless torment of his mind. In quiet moments, she spoke of peace and forgiveness, of the healing power threaded through the very soil soaked with so much suffering. Their strange companionship blossomed not through words, but shared silence. One afternoon, the distant thunder of marching feet alarmed them. A squad of Confederate soldiers had entered the woods, their uniforms dirt-streaked, eyes wary but searching. Alara's demeanor shifted instantly. She grabbed Thomas's arm. "You must go. Swear to me you will hide." Thomas nodded, the first real stirrings of fear in a long while filling him. He struggled to his feet, painfully steadying himself. "Wait," he said. "What will you do?" Her smile was sad. "I am not meant to be caught in these fights. I only sow quiet hope." Before he could question her further, she pulled a small bundle from beneath her cloak, a worn pocket watch, its face cracked but still ticking. "Take this," she said. "When things seem lost, remember the moment we shared, and listen for the crows." Thomas folded the precious token into his palm as the soldiers' voices drew near. He slipped into the thickets, heart pounding beneath the rising din, just as the enigmatic woman vanished into the shadows. No chase, no farewell. Only the rustling whisper of leaves and the distant caws of the gathering crows. The war claimed many lives in its cruel grasp, but Thomas survived. When the fields were finally silent of conflict, he returned to where Alara had found him. There, among the broken muskets and withered grass, he dug carefully only to find a small pile of wildflowers laid in a deliberate cross. He kept the pocket watch, its steady ticking a heartbeat of that strange, hopeful time. In the years that followed, Thomas told few about the woman who had nursed him back from death at Gettysburg. The mysterious Alara. A figure like no other, bound to the ravaged earth and the cries of the souls caught between life and death. Some soldiers whispered tales of a shadowy healer among the wounded. Others called her a witch or an angel. But Thomas knew the truth was held in the silent watch of the crows, the twisted branches of the forest, and the unbreakable bond of survival forged humbly beneath a blood-soaked sky. For more stories, like and subscribe.